Hey everyone. Arguably the most challenging part of getting onto a rappel line is when it comes time to weight the rappel line and release your direct connection. You typically have to pull your weight up off of your direct connection so that you can take up slack in your rappel line. And when you've got a bunch of Volbiv gear on your back hanging from a tree awkwardly, and maybe you don't even have a place to put your feet on the tree, that can be more upper body effort than most of us have available. So I've come up with a slight modification to the standard rescue kit, wherein instead of having a standard sling that we're using as the main anchor, we're going to use a 6mm cord in this case, with on one end just a figure 8 on a bite or a figure 8 follow through as our choke point that will get looped around our tree limb and then loop back through for a choke. And then at the other end of your cord, we're going to have a bit of fun here. So we're making a loop that's ultimately adjustable. The sliding knot is called a Blake's hitch, and I've put an extra, I've tucked the tail up through on the last step with a bite on it. Okay, so that was way too hard to see on camera and everything else, so I've prettied it up a little bit, and we'll go from here. Also trimmed it down to, I think, what is an appropriate length, so we'll see how that goes. So we've got our figure 8 on a bite with a little bit of whipping on the tail just to keep it clean and have one less cord flipping around. And then we've got a big loop with our Blake's hitch at the top of it. So our Blake's hitch here will slide up and down the line and give us 2 points of attachment for our other stuff that we're going to do. And it locks. By pulling on these, it locks. By just pushing it up and down, it slides. And by pulling its own stopper knot, it slides. You'll notice that I've put a bite through on the last step of the Blake's hitch. So when you're learning the Blake's hitch, it won't look like this, but once you go to use it on this particular anchor, you're going to want to have this bite put in there. It just helps release the whole system after it's been weighted off side, off kilter, off without both lines being weighted. Anyway, so Blake's hitch. And then on the working side of the Blake's hitch, we've got one short little alpine butterfly loop, and then a longer alpine butterfly. And try to keep them as tight to your Blake's hitch as you can. Once everything gets cinched down, they're gonna all work themselves away from each other, so you want to have it as tight as you can to begin with. So hopefully that's easier to see and identify as I'm going along. I'm going to jump into our mock-up tree, and I'll see you guys in a sec. Alrighty, I'm stuck in a tree again. Alright, we're in our mock-up tree. These will be pretending to be my risers. And I am level. Probably not going to land in a tree completely level, but I mean, I can give us a little bit of that, if that helps. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do, we get out our new sling, our new fancy main anchor. We're going to find our loop end. That's just made out of the figure 8 doubled back. We're going to give ourselves a little bit of slack, so we'll pull away the Blake's hitch. Make sure we kind of pinch that between our knees while we're doing our lassoing, our cowboy stuff here. Bunch up what you can, make a nice little ball to throw. And you're going to want to throw it over a tree, nice big limb, or the trunk itself if you have to. It will make a choke, so you can choke it around either of those just fine, and you can set up your rigging like that. I just have joists to hit, so there we go. So once you get your loop over the limb, stuff the rest of the sling through that loop as such, making a choke, and we'll just choke up on it until you're nice and secure. Don't be afraid to flip it around. Okay, so once that's on, don't have to worry so much about holding onto this. It's not going to fall anymore. And we'll find our Blake's hitch, and we'll slide it back up to around our face. Nice working level. And at this point, we're ready to tie on direct. So we've got to go into our little kits and get out our slings and beaners, putting extra beaners nice and safely on your gear if you can, so you don't drop them. Of course, we need to put our slings in on the opposite side of the gate when we go through our harness beaners, so that when we actually go to release our risers, that they've got a clear path to the exit. Okay, so once we've got that in, we're actually going to lock it in to clip it into the large loop that we have on our upper sling. So now we're tied in direct, and we actually are being backed up by this fancy Blake's hitch. Next thing we need to do is slide this up, taking up some of the slack. We want to get that as high as we can, but first we need to put an alpine butterfly just above it. That's the only knot that we have to know in the situation, in the emergency situation, is one alpine butterfly above where this gets adjusted to, this Blake's hitch. Because as we lower ourselves afterwards, that alpine butterfly is going to hold our rappel line, and we're just going to lower ourselves onto it. So we just give ourselves a little sense of how high we have to make that loop. Okay. Pinch off above it. Pull your Blake's hitch out of the way, and you probably want to sit up in your harness a little bit if you can with this, but I'm doing alpine butterfly. Okay, so it's hard to reach up there and work above your head and hold your breath and everything, but do your best and try to get as high as you can, because as you weight it, as you seat it, it's going to slip down. And you'll see when we go to slide this back up, we want to be able to take as much slack out of this as we can before we go on to our next step. Okay, so we've got our alpine butterfly tied as high as we can above our Blake's hitch. We're going to slide our Blake's hitch up, lock it in there, give it a test. Blake's hitch is tied properly, it's not slipping. Okay, so we've still got some slack in here. It's going to be hard to take out through this, so what we can do, since we're still hanging by our wing, is we can give this a good twisting and shorten it up as much as we can before we tie it back in. Yeah. Move that Blake's hitch down, tie it back in, lock it up, Blake's hitch up. There we go. Okay, so now that we've got all that slack, as much as we can taken out of the system, we use our backup beaner into our small alpine loop that we made on our sling. And we're going to take this extra bite from the working line. We're going to just push a bite through our main beaner, pass it up to the secondary beaner that we just put in. And we're going to wrap a couple wraps around our foot. We're going to cheat with that. Let's go to. Okay, now with that, I should be able to just push myself up, give my rigging just that extra chance, and then my legs should be able to hold the weight while I take myself out of my risers. Just a little bit, take out the line. And now we're free and completely supported by the Blake's hitch. I'm gonna let myself back down onto our primary loop here. And free my foot. Okay, we'll free our little cheater line, clear up the system. There we go. We don't need this beaner or this loop anymore, so we're going to take the beaner out, put it back into our somewhere that we won't lose it. Okay, so now that we're off of our risers, our wing is free to be one with the tree. We are going to set up our wrap line now, keeping this stuff kind of out of the way. I'm going to just pass our system through our main beaner to set up our rappel. That way we don't have to risk losing anything by taking things apart. So if you can find a beaner that fits through your main beaner here, then it's an ideal system for you. I think that's enough. We're gonna go from there up to that upper loop that we made with the alpine butterfly, lock in our beaner, lock it in. Gonna take up the slack on our rappel and hold the rappel line with one hand. Reach up on top of your Blake's hitch and just pull it down to you. It'll eventually just start sliding a little, and once it goes, it straightens out and the lines are even, you just ease it down and it will release our primary loop and our backup loop. Now we're sitting entirely on our rappel line. Just have to open our gate real quick and let that out. Even though it's loaded, it's not ideal, but it's the only way to free us from the system. So that's free. We're off direct. We're on rappel. I'm going to put 2 hands back on my brake line and just inch my way down to the quarters. Alright, so that worked pretty well with these dimensions. So I'm just going to walk through the creation of this sling with you guys. I could unravel the whole thing and give you an exact measurement, but if you just buy, let's say 20 feet, yeah, 20 feet or so, and start with your loop. Give yourself that nice big loop to be able to fit all of the rest of the loop through easily. Use the double back or the figure 8 follow through, figure 8 on a bite, however you want to call it. Start with a loop on the one end, and then wait. Okay, yeah, start with your figure 8 loop on the one end. Work your way down maybe, I don't know, 3 feet. And bring the other end up and around and tie yourself a Blake's hitch. So you want the loop of your Blake's hitch to be about the length of your body. So my foot is standing in the bottom of the loop right now. My Blake's hitch is coming up, and I've only got maybe another 1.5 feet before my sling. Or if we want to, let's say there's a solid 2 or 3 feet there. So a loop your body length and another 2 or 3 feet for your actual choked end here. Fabricate, let's say, tie your Blake's hitch, making sure you put a bite at the on the last step on the pull through. Then your 2 little alpine butterflies on the working end of the Blake's hitch, not on your main line. This main line goes straight through, and like a prusik nut, your Blake slides up and down it. So this is the working side of the Blake's hitch, and that's where we put our alpine butterflies. Big one down below, about the length of your hand, and the small one up as high as you can. See, even though I had them all real tight before I fully weighted it, they drifted apart from each other easily 2.5 inches each. So I lost 5 inches in my system. So pay close attention, or put good care into making them nice and close together, because you're going to lose that distance when it's fully weighted anyway. So all said and done, it packs up into a pretty neat little ball. It weighs about 250 grams, so it's really not much of a difference than the sling you would have been carrying anyway. And does take up a bit of volume, so I don't know. But 3 locking carabiners, this new anchor, and 2 short grommet slings or loops for tying into your your harnesses, carabiners. And yeah, remember that trick of twisting the slings, twisting those lines to get all of that slack out as much as you can before you try to do the mechanical advantage and get yourself off of the risers. All right. Probably not a perfect system yet, so I look forward to any input and upgrades that we can do to it. But I'm excited about this. Hopefully, if it's something simple enough that people can, adapt or adopt into their kit, it might make it a little bit less intimidating to do a self-rescue, and therefore probably safer. So, fingers crossed, and yeah, have a great flying season.